Good morning. I would like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint. My name is Kathy Frazee and I'm happy to be the worship associate for this service. I find the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint, also affectionately known as UUCF, to be an inclusive church that welcomes everyone regardless of their income, education, or sexuality. Unitarian Universalists are people of many backgrounds and identities. We are people of all ages and life stages. We embody a vision of peace, love, and understanding. We keep this in mind as we explore the relationship that humans have with guns during our service today. The following words from Naomi Klein were written in the context of how humans responded to the COVID crisis. I hope that you will see how they also give hope to the issue of ending gun violence. For so long, we were told that people would never accept deep change. They were too comfortable, too lazy, too selfish. And yet we have seen that when necessary changes are clearly explained and genuinely understood to be in the interest of protecting life and keeping the vulnerable safe, and when these changes are imposed on individuals and big business alike, most of us are more than willing to do our part. If you would like more information about Unitarian Universalism or our congregation, please contact one of our ministers or our office. The contact information can be found at uuflint.org. And now for this morning's announcements. Sometimes it's cold and windy when members of the Woodside and UUCF congregations stand on the courthouse lawn with their Black Lives Matter signs. Soon it will be hot and humid. When protesters stand in the cold or heat to call for justice, the people passing by know that they are serious. Please join the members of Flint's Woodside Church on the courthouse lawn every Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. to support the Black Lives Matter movement. If you recently thought about what you really want to do when COVID is over, sign on to Kindred Conversations this Wednesday at 6 p.m. and see how your wish compares to other UUs. Our theme is titled, When COVID is Over, I Will... The Zoom sign-on information is in the weekly e-update, and if you don't get the emailed newsletter, just go to our website at uuflint.org, travel to the bottom of the homepage, and click on Subscribe to our newsletter. A Canvas reminder. Our pledge campaign has come to a close as of April 30th. If you have not returned your pledge form yet, please do so as soon as possible. Contact the office if you need another one. Thanks to everyone for participating. Please remember that next week is the second Sunday of the month, and our special second Sunday offering will go to Planned Parenthood of Michigan. We hope you will consider supporting them by participating in this offering. Please join us for coffee hour after the service on Zoom. The ID can be found on our website, on our Facebook page, and in the e-update. The memorial service for Jim Gentz will be Saturday, May 8th at 2 p.m. at Anderson Rudd Funeral Home in Blissfield. Revlynn will officiate, and everyone is welcome. Our deepest sympathies are extended to Jim's family and friends. Our hearts are heavy here at UUCF. We will now begin our service with a prelude by Jennifer Howard. Now it's time to light our chalice. We welcome you to do that at home also. As we light our chalice today, we honor the gift of life which burns in each of us. May this flame remind us of our responsibility to kindle and tend that gift in others through acts of love and justice. And now if you please recite the covenant with me, even if you're at home. Recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, and the transforming power of love and service, we gather as a sacred, intentional community to freely seek knowledge and truth, to celebrate the fullness of life, and by our actions to increase goodness and justice.
Good morning. Our opening words are from Carrie Mueller. Come join us. You are welcome. Bring your sorrow and your grief. Bring your joy and your gratitude. Bring your fear and your courage. Bring your hope or find your hope here. Bring your precious and unique self. Come join us. You are always welcome.
Our meditation reading today is from Martin Luther King's Antidotes for Fear. Sigmund Freud spoke of a person who was quite properly afraid of snakes in the heart of the African jungle. And he also spoke of another person who neurotically feared the snakes under the carpet in his city apartment. Psychologists say that normal children are born with only two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. And that all other fears are environmentally acquired. Most of these acquired fears are like the fear of snakes under the carpet, neurotic illusions. Normal fear protects us. Abnormal fear paralyzes us. Normal fear motivates us to improve our individual and collective welfare. Abnormal fear constantly poisons and distorts our inner lives. By looking squarely and honestly at our fears, we learn that many of them reside in some childhood need or apprehension. By bringing our fears to the forefront of consciousness, we may find them to be more imaginary than real. Some of them will turn out to be snakes under the carpet.
Our reading is entitled Vignettes of Death. A classmate brought a gun to school and took it out in the classroom I was in. He was yelling and screaming and threatening everyone. All I could think was to grab a pair of scissors. I just stood there holding the scissors and shaking until the teacher managed to calm him down enough to grab the gun. That happened 2 years ago, and I still have scars from where I grabbed the scissors so hard in fear. I thought I was going to die that day.
My 12-year-old nephew and his friend were playing with a gun. The other child accidentally shot my nephew directly in the face, and he died instantly. Parents should lock up their guns. Kids should not be able to find them or touch them.
My son, Michael, was shot and killed in Chicago the night of July 18th, 2017. My wife and I are different people now. They did make an arrest, which is amazing. The arrest rate for homicide in Chicago is incredibly low. It's been over 2 years since the arrest, and we're looking at 1 to 2 more years before the trial starts. When your child is born, you discover a whole new level of love that you never knew existed. When your child is killed, you discover a whole new level of pain you never knew existed.
One of my sweet but misguided high school students ended up accidentally firing a handgun while showing it off to a friend. The gun discharged, and the other teenager died at the scene. A relative legally owned the gun. Now, one 16-year-old is dead, and another's life is ruined because of how easy it was to find a gun to act tough with.
A friend of mine killed himself with a gun readily available in his house. He was 15. I miss him, and I wish the gun hadn't been there for the simple reason that maybe he'd still be alive.
I had to sit by and watch one of my best friends mourn her sister and her sister's unborn child after her sister was hit by a stray bullet while sitting outside of her home. How crazy is that? Sitting outside, talking to a friend 1 minute, and the next minute you're dead because someone wanted to play Wild West in the streets of a major city.
On the night of the Pulse shooting in Orlando, I was out with friends at a neighboring bar. And we always ended our nights at Pulse because they had the best drink specials after midnight, and we loved the vibe. Our group of 6 were driving in 2 cars, so half of us left the bar that we were currently at and headed over to Pulse, while the other 2 and I stopped at Wendy's right across the street to grab a late night bite to eat. We were watching from the window when the shots rang out. It's true what everyone says. It sounded like music. It wasn't until we watched people running for their lives that we realized what was happening. We sat and watched in disbelief, and my body went numb. And there wasn't much we could do until the police arrived. After all was said and done, we were free to go. The worst part was the sound of cell phones ringing from inside the nightclub. Families calling to check on their loved ones. They were dead. They couldn't answer their phones.
I'm a live rifle, police and the IRA. I'm a live rifle, use it every day. Breaks down easy. fits into a pram. A child could carry it, do it no harm. Armalite rifle and the Holy Trinity. It's used against you for Irish jokes and the BBC. Armalite rifle, please skew the aim. Armalite rifle, use it every day. Rifle does harm, it shoots for miles. If a bullet gets into your heart, destroys your insides. Armalite rifle, police duty, eh? Armalite rifle, use it every day.
In 1967, on a sunny summer Saturday in rural Ohio, I was at the rifle range, leaning on one of Dad's latest creations. My father, with the help of his 3 boys, had built 6 rock-solid, concrete, professional-grade shooting benches. Dad was master of the monthly rifle shoot, and my brothers and I ran the paper targets. No one told us to run, we just did. The shooters that day were absolutely amazed at the new benches. I can still hear their exclamations. If you can't shoot a good group now, they said, you can no longer blame it on those old, wiggly, wooden shooting benches. The goal of bench rest shooting is to put 5 holes into a target at 100 yards, holes so close together that you can hide them under a dime. To shoot a 5-shot dime group, you need a good rifle, a steady bench and trigger finger, and no coffee. On that day, the gun club's most revered and colorful member arrived, old Jim Tharp. We called him Tharpy. Jim sometimes wore a black eye patch over his missing left eye, but usually he didn't even bother to wear it. When he did, though, his bushy mustache and the patch made him look a great deal like a pirate of old. But the eye patch wasn't what made him colorful. Jim was revered and colorful because he had a gun collection that made him legendary. And he had a story to tell about each one. He would frequently bring one of his prize pieces to the shoot, and everyone would gather around and marvel at an old Sharps buffalo rifle, or at a big bore Remington rolling block target rifle in .44-90 caliber, or at his old Springfield sporting rifle, one of 5,000 made in the 30s. He brought that Springfield rifle, and he had bought it to hunt deer in Oregon, where he was a lumberjack, and it was in that very dangerous profession that he lost his eye. He was a lifelong bachelor, which may explain why he got away with spending so much money on guns. It was very different for my father. When we went with Dad on a gun trading trip, on the way home he would often say to us, "Your mother doesn't need to know that I bought another gun." Tharpy, on the other hand, never had to ask children to hide the truth. He was lord of the guns, an island unto himself, and he didn't answer to anyone. It occurred to me when I sat down to create today's message that my life has accidentally prepared me to give today's sermon. It is what I hope will be a well-informed opinion about America's lethal public health problem, death by gun. I think my life has also prepared me to give this message so it shows no disrespect for people who own and like guns. Of course, I know that just because I got guns and ammo for Christmas presents, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm an expert on reducing gun violence. And yes, we often got guns for Christmas. One year, I got a used police riot gun that was in great shape. Families celebrate the birth of Jesus in many different ways. And just because I spent a great deal of my time shooting and cleaning and fixing guns and hunting with guns and reloading ammunition for my rifle so I could shoot that dime group, just because I did all of those things, that doesn't mean I'm an expert on gun laws. But I do think I learned a lot about people who have guns and love guns and what sometimes happens to them because of the seductive, almost magical attraction of a powerful weapon. The sword calls for violence, said Homer in the Odyssey. And I would add, that call is especially strong to some people. Far from the 1960s gun club of my youth, the impoverished people in the cities of America were living a very different life. If you live in poverty, statistically, you have little hope of escaping that poverty, especially if you are black. It is the fear of that fact that makes some poor people hear the gun's call to violence. They hear it because in the city, people sometimes get shot and die from a stray bullet. Die just while sitting on their front porch. That can understandably make a person afraid and mistakenly think a gun will solve their fears. This fear-inducing problem of poverty was exacerbated for over 50 years because the dense gasoline fumes of the inner city contained lead. Breathing lead destroys the impulse control part of the brain, leading to high rates of violent crime. Research now shows dramatically, conclusively, when lead was removed from gasoline in the late 80s and early 90s, the rate of violent crime started dropping dramatically in American cities. But the damage could not be completely undone because the fear of crime continued to poison people's minds. Americans, urged on by the firearms industry, decided they needed a gun to protect themselves from the bad city people, even though the imagined enemy was just a fantasy. Starting in the 70s and 80s, gun advertisements implied that a criminal lurked everywhere, behind every corner. So people needed to be prepared for the inevitable home invasion or carjacking. Millions and millions of rural Americans, hundreds of miles from any city, were scared into buying a gun, even though the threat to justify it was like a snake under the carpet. It didn't exist. The poisonous lead in the gasoline was gone, but irrational, poisonous fear and the hope that the gun god would rescue you from it, those were the new poisons. On another sunny Saturday at the shooting range in the late 60s, any thoughts that guns could be a problem were either far away or non-existent. Tharpe arrived with one of his 3 World War II M1 rifles. When it came time to shoot, the first event would be offhand. In other words, you didn't get to use those rock-solid benches. You had to stand on your own 2 feet and try and hit a target 200 yards away. Everyone else had modern rifles with telescopic sights, of course, but Jim elected to use his old M1 with its iron sights. Some of the guys snickered behind his back. Of course, he didn't have to bother to close his left eye while sighting because he had no left eye, a fact he brought up frequently for the amusement of others, especially for the boys who ran the targets. When everyone had shot, we all walked down to the targets to read 'em and weep, as someone inevitably said. I still remember Dad's smile and how he shook his head in amazement. Tharpy didn't win the match with his old rifle, but he had done much better than many of the other shooters who had powerful scopes on their modern rifles. In many ways, it was just another good day with the guys having fun at their hobby. But a gun has never been a fishing pole or a set of skis. It may be a hobby, but having a gun can be a very lethal hobby. Over 50 years have passed since I was a kid, watching men shoot the breeze and shoot their guns just for fun. But now, in 2021, we know so well, so tragically well, that gun ownership is about much more than shooting a dime group on a sunny Sunday at the rifle range. I mentioned earlier that I feel my life may have prepared me to bring some helpful insights about America's deadly gun problem. My preparation came in part from my own experiences of the almost magical attraction of a powerful weapon. It also came from being with a lot of perfectly normal, perfectly sane people who were also fascinated by guns. But if I have some helpful insights, they were also born when my twin brother, at the age of 17, committed suicide with a gun. I will not go into the details about his death, other than to say it gave me the full picture of gun ownership. Many other Americans are now having similar, terrible learning experiences. Guns seem harmless most of the time. Some even get and give them as Christmas presents. But then, certain people, at certain times in their lives, get afraid of something, and they think a gun will solve that fear. They start shooting people they don't like because of fear. They shoot people they don't even know out of fear. They shoot someone because they fear the person might be a criminal who might have a gun. In many cases, they even shoot themselves, and it is always because of fear. No background check, no psychological examination will accurately predict who these certain fear-filled people will be. My brother Terry was simply afraid of being rejected because his girlfriend told him goodbye. The gun rack was just 10 steps from his bedroom. I've come to believe that in every equation that tries to explain the latest act of gun violence, in every such equation, the common denominator is irrational, abnormal fear. The hatred we often blame for violence, that's just an expression of the fear. And fear always comes first. A longtime police officer and the founder of the Institute for Criminal Justice Training, Randy Shrewsbury, believes irrational fear is behind most police shootings. Shrewsbury says police often shoot people out of unreasonable fear, and they have a very high rate of suicide because they have been trained to be afraid beyond all reason. He calls it warrior-based training. And it bombards officers with worst-case possibilities regarding the risk to their lives. This type of police training is the norm in the United States, and it doesn't teach officers that statistically it is very improbable that they will be hurt or killed while doing their job. In fact, police officers are 5 times more likely to kill themselves than to be killed in the line of duty. The irony and tragedy of that fact is almost unbelievable. Think of it. Police officers often kill themselves because they incorrectly believe that it is very likely that they will be killed by a bad man with a gun. They suffer from what Martin Luther King called abnormal fear that constantly poisons and distorts a person's inner life. I would like to tell you that my father's attitudes about guns changed after my brother Terry took his own life. They did not. Guns and ammunition were still left unsecured, even when a granddaughter prone to depression lived there. It was as though my father's allegiance to the gun god demanded he deny the dark side of that god. I think that may be true of many people who deny that guns themselves call for violence. They simply don't understand that guns call out to fearful people who believe there are snakes under every carpet, and so they buy more guns to solve the problem of gun violence. Perhaps my final education about guns came in the form of a near overdose of guns. Jim Tharp died and left much of his extensive gun collection to my dad and his boys. The Lord of the Guns had no heirs, and he evidently liked Dad's shooting benches. In any case, the feel of this rolling in guns, my own and that of my father and my brothers, it all made it so very clear that old guns are nothing like old skis or old treasured fishing rods. Yes, guns were just wood and metal, but their power over the human imagination was absolutely addictive. Luckily, it was the executor of Tharpy's estate who put it all in perspective. We were standing there, dividing up the loot, and he said, in his experience, there was a kind of sickness in people's desire for guns. Sickness, that was the word that he used. If I had previously had the full picture of gun ownership in my mind, now it had a nice frame around it. My father had a puzzled look on his face and expressed some polite doubt in what the executor had said. It's odd. I met that guy once, but I nevertheless remember his face and his heartfelt words because I had never heard before that thought expressed so well. I knew from personal experience he was right. My 3 years in divinity school were expensive, so I eventually sold off most of my share of Tharpy's guns. But they were great fun while I had them. Many of them were old single-shot black powder rifles, so far removed from today's semi-automatic weapons that they defy comparison. Gun ownership obviously doesn't always mean you must fear other people you might need to kill with just the right kind of gun. But I was lucky, though, in many ways. In my overindulged, white privileged life, there was no fear to drive me blindly into the hands of the gun god. Other people are not so lucky. It is here that I should mention that I'm sure there are very few people who would confess that guns are in any way their god. Nevertheless, I stand by my belief that by most definitions of God, guns become a god for some people. To those who are not in favor of gun law reform and who deny they bow to any gun god, I would ask a simple, respectfully posed question. It is a simple, unthreatening test to determine who or what is your own true God. The question is simple. What will you do to keep your loved ones safe from gun violence? But to cut through to the truth and get an insightful answer, the question has to be worded in the form of a frightening story that brings out the truth like nothing else. This exercise in divining the nature of your God goes like this. Envision that you have a nightmare in which you see a loved one get shot dead at a nightclub or at their school, or you see them in your dream commit suicide. It is a terrible dream. And remember, while a dream lasts, it brings the dreamer very close to the same level of emotion that happens in waking life. A dream never predicts a predetermined future that you can't change. So imagine waking from that dream and thinking, what will I do to make sure this never happens? Will I keep my love safe at home, safe from the nightclub where they would have so much fun? Do I homeschool my kids to keep them safe? Do I buy my granddaughter a pink pistol and teach her how to shoot it? Should I demand the county hire well-armed guards for the school, or maybe even arm the teachers? Or maybe I will have to consider giving up some of my personal gun-buying, gun-owning privileges to make sure my terrible dream doesn't come true in real life. Now, in that test, I tried to include real things that people do to save their loved ones from guns. I understand that pink pistols sell very well. But obviously, only the final choice I mentioned, the choice to realize that no gun owner is an island, only that choice worships the God of selfless love and reason. All the other choices are about hiding and getting more guns to be ready for more violence, and that is bowing down to the gun god. People can either prepare to be violent, or they can quiet the gun's call to violence by making their numbers much smaller. For the life and happiness of everyone, it is time for every American to understand which God they serve, and if serving them brings life or death. Thank you.
Now I'd like to share with you a moment of generosity. It is the best feeling in the world comes when we give of ourselves, whether it is our time, talent, or treasure. For it is in giving that we receive. Those words from St. Francis of Assisi remind us that whatever we give, it will come back to us in unexpected ways. Your giving can be done at uuflint.org or by sending a check to the office. Please contact the ministers to give your gifts of time and talent. Those are always needed and appreciated.
As we depart, may we remember that courage is the choice to accept the consequences of a life not controlled by fear. And now let us extinguish our chalice.
And if you'd like to join me in the words for extinguishing the chalice, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.